So I've been requested by a lot of you to make junctions with splines in Unity. And let's talk about it because it requires a lot of talking. So let's get into it. First of all, make sure to go to Package Manager, Unity Registry, and then make sure that Splines package is installed. And then I don't really recommend using my SplineMesh package for this particular feature because my SplineMesh package uses custom mesh extrusion. The problem with that is when it comes to junctions, to figure out the algorithm with this package, it's very difficult. That's because Unity exposes only very little stuff regarding mesh data. So I don't recommend using my SplineMesh package. I'll show you an alternative, which is a little bit more easier. So the best way to do it is to actually do it in a 3D software like Blender, okay? That is the way I recommend you to do. I know this is counterintuitive, but this is the best way. I'll show you a way to do it in Unity as well, because a 3D software is designed to do these things, okay? A game engine, on the other hand, doesn't need to know a lot about different modeling techniques or different algorithms to extrude a mesh and create junctions. It's much better to use a 3D software. There's probably things out there. So use a 3D software, use splines inside it if you want, and then bring it to Unity. Design your 3D world in a 3D software. That's what it's meant to be for. And then bring it to Unity. All right, I know it's a lot more hard work, but that is the way that people used to do it. That is always going to be the way that is going to be optimized and everything. It's going to save you a lot of time, not now, but in the future, once you build a game and then you have to make changes, a 3D software is so much more easier. It's far less headache. Okay, so trust me on this. Use a 3D software if you can. If you still want to do it in Unity, I'm going to show you a way. Okay, and for that, you don't need to install anything else. You just go to Unity registry and search for splines, or you can go to in project. You'll find splines installed if you have it. Then you go to the samples that they have provided and then import the spline examples. And this requires shader graph. Okay, shader graph will be installed along with this importing. So that's one of the drawbacks. So you just go ahead and import this. It's only 3 megabytes. So how do we make an actual road? You go back to the samples, and then inside the runtime folder, there's a particular script called RoadLoftBehaviour. Okay, that is the only script that you need. In fact, you can even move it out of the samples and delete everything else if you don't need anything else. Right click, let's create a spline, draw splines tool. So let's say I've created a junction like this. Okay, I can click on active context and click on spline, and then I can change different properties. For example, I can set this to linear and set this to linear as well. Set this to linear and let this be a curved mesh. I'm also setting this to linear. Now, I'm willingly setting these things to linear to show you a problem with this and how to overcome it. Okay. So now you can just simply add the loft road behavior script. You can add a component, loft, loft road behavior, and there we go. So you can see there are a few issues. Firstly, there are artifacts here. This thing is not so smooth. And here, because I set this to linear, things are very bad. So how do we fix these things? So for the solution, you can go to here and increase the segments per meter. That will fix it. And what do I mean by segments per meter? You can click on this button and toggle selection wire. And this will show you the wireframe. And you can see a lot of the issues. So if you increase this, you can see the resolution increases. And then there is always overlap. Okay. So you need to rearrange this thing, maybe even add some points. Let's see. Maybe you can add a point here, move it so that things are a little bit more rounded. Now this part is looking nice. Here, it's because everything is linear. If we set it to auto, and then you need to add support points. Again, this is very important, which is why I'm showcasing it to you. Because once you add support points, then things will look a lot more easier to work with, okay? So sometimes linear won't be enough. And you can see here, it looks horrible. There's so much artifacts going on. If I go to unlit draw mode to make it a lot more obvious, you can probably see the issue. It's not just artifacts, it's also the material. because the road material will not work properly here. If I use a simple colored material, you won't notice the overlap because the texture doesn't cross itself. If I turn off selection wire, you won't notice a difference, but that is the drawback of this. Okay, which is why using a 3D engine is so much better than using a game engine for these things. A game engine is not supposed to do these things, but you can still hack your way around it. And you can see the mesh itself is overlapping at the junction, and you can't use custom textures on this. So in this road material, you can't use it because it looks very weird. This is why I'm recommending you to use a 3D engine, because it's so much better. But there is another way that you can do this. Let's say you have a continuous mesh, okay, like this. Let's add a loft road behavior, or you can use even my own splines. Okay. Now let's say you want to create a junction here. What you can do is, instead of connecting it like this, which will cause weird things, what you can do is leave it here, go through, it will still cause the problems. Okay. Then go to the move tool and move it down. Something like this. Let me turn off the grid and show you how this looks. So you're technically creating tiny space, just enough so that it doesn't create any visual bugs. Okay. I hope it makes sense. This is how it will look like. This looks bad, but it is what it is. You can use other materials as well. For example, this one, you can increase the texture scale to make it like this, which looks okayish. It's not that bad. It's looking cleaner than before, but it is one way to do it. And this is why I recommended the actual solution, which is to use a 3D software or to use third-party tools. Okay, but I highly recommend using 3D software because 3D software is supposed to do crazy stuff like this. Not a game engine. Game engine does not expose enough data to manipulate with. Plus, my package uses custom mesh, which doesn't allow for such complexities. Okay. I might be able to do if I were to just generate a plane, add a script for just generating a plane, but then again, textures would be a problem because textures need a seamless UV. Again, I always recommend using a 3D engine, not Unity. This is me being honest. Okay. But yeah, this is a workaround temporarily. So I hope this video helps a little bit. The only downside to loft road behavior is to, when you click on selection wire, you can see that everything is spread out evenly. With my spline mesh, the same thing is achievable, but I'll show it to you just a second. So I can duplicate this, bring it to the side, and instead of loft road behavior, if I add my spline mesh script, not spline mesh resolution, spline mesh, you can check out the video on the top right if you want to learn how to add that. You can select a mesh. In this case, let's go for the road. I'm using the blend file. So I can edit this in Blender if I want to. Call this SplineMesh road. And UV resolutions, let's set this to 1 for now. And click generate mesh. And that's probably because forward axis is not set properly. So if I change this to Y and generate mesh, now you can see the same road has been generated. But this time it's using my SplineMesh script. And you can see some difference. First of all, I can change the UV axis to use the Y axis, generate mesh. And now the textures are a little bit more signed. And now I can use UV resolutions. And let's set this to 50. Generate a mesh. And I can see it uses different UV meshes. You can see the UVs are causing a problem here. So I can just go down and click on uniform UVs, generate mesh again, and that will be solved. And now there will be uniform UVs around. Let me actually change this to the other road material so that it's a lot more similar. Now the difference is here, when you click on both of these things, you can see the difference. Okay. This one is uniformly assigned. This one is a little bit more staggered, meaning now you can add more detail to wherever you want. So if I go down here and turn on auto generate mesh, this is going to generate mesh as I move this thing. So it's a very handy feature sometimes. So if I add a spline point here, if I want to add more detail, I can add more points. Okay. But if there's an area where I don't want much detail, for example, here, I can just leave it, and it's going to use the same number of triangles here. So you can have straight roads have less detail and curved roads have more detail. This one, however, it works very similar to my spline mesh resolution. So the more I move, the more geometry it adds, which is going to make it look more uniform. I mean, it's going to look visually great, but I don't think you'll notice a difference. Okay, you won't notice a difference. I can also change the scale adjustment of X to 2, generate mesh, and then change the width as well. So you can see the difference between both of them. You can prioritize areas and you can deprioritize areas, which is great if you have level building and stuff like that. So yeah, this is how you create junctions. It's much better to use a 3D software and use a junction mesh, but it is how you do it with splines in Unity Splines actually. So I hope this video is useful to you. It's not perfect, but if you need a quick in-engine junction without a 3D tool, this is your best option right now in Unity, using Unity Splines.